First of all, we need to understand what is qualitative data analysis. Qualitative, as we mentioned before in previous lectures, these are data related to descriptive and not quantitative. They are not quantified. They allow respondents to express themselves and describe their feelings. The qualitative data descriptive analysis, they making sense of relationships, meanings that help to answer the research questions. The aim of this research is to extract, as it's mentioned here, extract meaningful insights from the data and provide valid and variable findings. We have several things to do with the analysis of the qualitative data. We have the mechanical part and we have the intellectual part. The mechanical part is the handling, sorting, and categorizing the data, اللي هي بيبقى زي ان احنا نحطها forms، بنعمل لها ordering، يعني زي ما نقول بنعمل لها processing. However, the intellectual part of the data, which is extracting the meaning and thinking about the data itself. We can use this, or researchers can use recordings, using transcripts, notes, summaries, and words, phrasing. So this is the intellectual part, الجزء الذهني اللي في موضوع analyzing of qualitative data. Actually, we have several approaches in analyzing qualitative data. We have the very famous grounded theory, qualitative research approach, complete qualitative research approach, and we have the analytic induction and data display and verification. We will explain each one of this in later slides. Also, we have the basic review of data, bottom up, top bottom, and interact approach, getting to know data, pulling it apart, looking for relationship, etc. We will explain each one of these approaches in the next slides. The first of all, we need to differentiate between the deductive approach and inductive approach. What is a deductive approach, or sometimes called the deductive reasoning, or sometimes it is called deduction. Deduction or the deductive approach starts out with a general statement or hypothesis. يعني خلينا نقول افتراض. Okay, so it begins with افتراض and examine the possibility to reach a specific conclusion or a logical conclusion according or related to this hypothesis. This is a scientific method used for deduction to test a hypothesis and theories. So if we have a hypothesis that needs to be proved or otherwise, we use the deductive approach. However, in the inductive approach, it involves the beginning with some observations. We don't have any hypothesis to test. So we have some observations and we try to understand and seek patterns in these observations. Then we are trying to make a theory out of the patterns. فالافتراض مش بيجي في الأول زي deductive approach، لكن بيجي في النهاية، يبقى بنفترض after observations. So as it is said in the deductive and inductive approach, go for field work to test theory and information and make a theory building rather than theory testing. على عكس الديدكتيف بنعمل الهايبوثيسيس الاول وبعدين نثبت صحته من خطأه، لكن في الاندكتيف بنبيلد the theory after making the research itself. Okay. Also, we have the interactive approach. The interactive approach is one where the content of the discussion, or sometimes even the methodology, is adopted over the course of research program. So that's why it is called interactive. Why we use interactive, both inductive and deductive, الاثنين مع بعض, تمام? Because sometimes it is difficult to use pure inductive approach. So we use both approach. When this approach is useful, it is useful for time-sensitive projects where there isn't scope for multiple rounds of research. So we use the interactive approach in this kind or this instances. Keep in mind that all researchers, خدوا بالكم إن we all have bias. يبقى كلنا عندنا تحيز sometimes. We have different ways of thinking, opinions, or attitudes. Sometimes it affects the way we are inducting or يعني analyzing الدata والqualitative data. تمام. We have different personalities according to our life experiences, general knowledge, work experience. Also, it is important that this doesn't interrupt or limit the data collection or analysis interpretation. We have to be aware of our own bias, challenge our own preconceptions, articulate them, and leave them aside. Okay? Okay, moving to another approach, which theorists call no one approach. Approach بتاعت أي حد. Why it is called this name? Because sometimes this approach is constructed, created from diverse range of things. So it's called pre-collage. يعني adopting a variety of tools and يعني collected from diverse things and adopted an approach. It's called one approach. طبعا this approach is difficult and time consuming. Standard techniques. Many approaches as the researchers. كل researcher يطلع بالapproach بتاعه. There is no one approach. It is called pre-collage. كل واحد بيخترع طريقة جديدة وهو بيعمل الريسيرش بتاعه. It is called no one approach. طيب, how we can use the approach to use according to certain factors, according to background and the training of the researcher, according to his work and his own work, mind work to level of experiences, level of knowledge, the resource available, the availability of theory, and because we have different types of approach or different factors we have to take into consideration when we are selecting the type or approach to analyze qualitative data. In our process analysis, researchers must not forget about theories or models that can be valuable for aiding in the analysis. We have certain tips to aid analysis, the qualitative data, like developing and expand thinking these models and theory, speed the analysis process by giving it a framework and suggest questions to ask. It provides guidelines and it provides ideas and it guides the researcher how exactly to better analyze and suggest the procedures for analyzing the qualitative data. Okay, speaking about procedures, we have here stages, or they are the stages to analyze the qualitative. They have mainly two famous stages. First is planning, and the second is the do. And we have also some steps: organizing the data, getting to know the data, getting the grips with what is going on, making it. We should understand all these stages in our in the next slides. First of all, or the first stage is planning and starting the analysis. It's very important to plan, very important to think ahead about what I'm going to do. Every researcher must define the problem, as we take in the beginning of our course. What is our research question? We have to understand and define it very accurately. In our previous lecture, we remember about the sample and how many, the population, and the sampling frame. If you remember our last lecture about sampling, the data collection methods, also we took that: interview, ethnography, projective techniques, how the findings will be used, and also some analysis done at the data collection phase, like seeing, hearing the data, thinking about it, recording and making notes. All these are in the planning and the starting of the analysis. And also we have during and just after the field work. Okay, by writing notes, by remembering body languages while we are conducting interviews, and writing any remarks, notable remarks while conducting the research and collecting the data, writing the issues faced during the field work, and writing the implications that يعني constitute the early findings. تمام، وبنكتب الملاحظات while we are doing our work. So in the planning phase, in the during phase, and then we develop an analysis plan. The analysis plan, we should ask ourselves certain question. لما اقول we يعني قصدي the researcher، يعني اللي بيعمل الاناليسيس واللي بيعمل الريسيرش. The researcher must ask himself several questions. الconstraints، القيود حوالين الريسيرش، زي التايمينج، زي البudget, the approach needed, and also the researcher asks about the research consideration, like the pre-research or theories, the literature, the research, this certain research objectives, detail level, the end use of the findings, the output, the presentation, reports. All this to be included into the analysis plan. So this is the first phase, the developing, the planning, التخطيط للتحليل. تمام؟ طيب the second phase is doing the analysis. الفعل، الاكشن ورك بقى، ان انا بدات فعلا التحليل، امشي بقى احقق البلان اللي انا خططتها دي. The first step of doing the analysis is organizing the data. Organizing الترتيب يعني اللي هو تنظيم. Organizing of the data, like reviewing the original research brief. أنا خلاص عملته بقى وجمعت بالفعل، أنا دلوقتي في مرحلة التحليل. Reviewing the notes and recordings, preparing the transcripts. خدوا بالكم الانترفيوز حوار، we have to write the transcripts and preparing the transcript, making summaries, list questions, input the transcript into software. We have different softwares using in analyzing qualitative data, like عارفين ال SPSS لل quantitative data analysis. عندنا بقى في سوفت وير تاني اسمه the in vivo ده for analyzing qualitative data، وعندنا many other software يعني، بس ده ايه اشهر زي ال SPSS كده في ال quantitative. تمام. So first of all in the organizing data process we have to prepare the transcripts and put them into the software. بنعمل عملية تنظيم. Then we get to the data, meaning understanding the data, listening to the recordings and read the transcripts, making yourself familiar with them and ask help of your colleagues and team members يسمعوا معاك ويفهموا maybe making some notes about these transcripts. So the second one is getting to know the data. Then get to grips, making sense out of data. After listening, trying to understand, now it is the time for making sense out of data. Like data handling, مناولة الداتا، المناولة، عارفين المناولة في البرودكتس أو في المخزون مثلا، هو ترتيبها وتصنيفها. برضو the same applies for data للبيانات والمعلومات. pulling the data apart, meaning trying to تحليل بقى وتفسير. developing headings, putting codes، بحط لها أكواد وشفرات. apply headings or codes to chunks of data. and في عندنا الcategorizing، التصنيف بقى، دي اللي بيسموها الايه الhandling of data، اللي هي getting to grips, making sense of data, data handling and putting the data apart. ساعات بسبق في الشرح وبنسى أقلب. تمام. Okay. Then making links، ترابط. making relationships، compare data from different respondents. making patterns, relationships, pathways. looking for common or different words. looking for anomalies اللي هي something exceptional، الشاذ عن الموضوع، and outliers. looking at all in context، في المحيط بها أو في الكونتكست بتاعها. so making links, trying to build up understanding and relationships. خدوا بالكم 4 steps في الاكشن. الاول organize، بعد كده trying to understand، بعد كده to make sense، بعد كده to make links. okay. then data display. I put these data into diagrams and charts. Making charts and making use of charts is very important. Sometimes one image up more than 1,000 words زي ما المثل بيقول. use a brain dump. brain dump يعني ايه؟ كل اللي في ذهنك حطه في صورة، كل اللي في ذهنك حطه على الورق. اعمل ماب، اعمل سبايدر جرام، اعمل charts، اعمل diagrams. تمام. يبقى تحط كل اللي في ده في شكل مرئي، تمام، وفي شكل chart. So this is called data display. We have many types of data display, like this one مثلا. Okay, this is diagram summarizing, influencing on whatever it is, socialization. مش موضوعنا لكن it's just an example. Another example, this is perceptual map. تمام. برضو على موضوع من المواضيع. This is perceptual map. So this can speak up more than 1,000 words. بدل ما تقعد تكتب كتابة, put up your thoughts in a data display. And finally, pulling the findings together. Pulling the findings together. بتربط بقى الأمور ببعضها. تمام. Now, by this stage, you should have an idea of the story. And you can check the findings out against the brief ده اللي احنا عملناه في خالص. Check the findings with the previous research. Check or compare the findings with literature review، الأدبيات اللي حصلت قبل كده. Discuss the findings with the team and colleagues. Team members test the findings, verify the findings. هل making sense? Does the story hold up؟ متماسكة كده وفعلا الفايندينجز جاي فعلا real good analysis of the data you have, and by then you are reviewing your findings. Findings meaning that it is credible. These findings are credible, plausible. Do the data support them؟ الفايندينجز دي فعلا جايه من الداتا بعد ما عملنا اناليسيس، هي الداتا فعلا قالت كده. You can check it out. Do they fit with findings from elsewhere, maybe from previous research or previous literature reviews? Are the other explanations the data better ولا الاكسبلانيشن اللي ظهر ده فعلا fitting more؟ Okay. After reviewing findings, we come to checking, verifying, and developing. You think about what is the connection and the pattern means. In the context of individual interviews, in the context of the sample, in the context of theme, concept, idea, in the concept of the whole story. You should read the transcript and discuss the findings with team members and the others, and you read the literature out more from the literature. الليتريتشر اللي هي الادبيات اللي موجوده في الريسيرش، اكيد حد كان عن الموضوع ده قبل كده. Compare the findings with what is set out in the literature, and you question the findings according to this read in literature. Okay. You go back and forth كده وتتأكد وتشوف ايه دي validity of the final draft of the analysis. You think whether the big picture really does explain, capture the detail or not. So this is really important when validating. يعني ايه validate؟ التأكد من صحة الشيء أو التحقق من صحته إذا كان فعلا valid. And then finally completing it. Completing the analysis. Does the big picture or the story count for all details? As I just said, that the details fit in the big picture. Can you see the whole thing, or complete narrative, a story, a sequence, or pathway? Asking many questions in order to complete the pictures. Finally, we have here some guidelines for effective process of qualitative analysis. Tips, advices عشان تقدر ان انت يعني تقدر ان انت analyze the qualitative data correctly. Should be disciplined or rigorous. مهم جدا. Disciplined, منضبط, or rigorous, or rigorous يعني بالعربي rigorous. I'm trying to check its meaning in Arabic or even explain it in English. Strict, very tough. Okay, accurate in other meaning. Okay, thorough and comprehensive. rigid دي حاجة كده برضو زي بس systematic منظم من غير ما يكون يعني fixed or يعني غير مرن. تمام. Open to possibilities. We have to be open to possibilities and insights that might be contradicted with your own opinion. فأنت لازم تكون open to all possibilities. And keep an open mind. Don't jump to conclusions too early. Wait until the finish of the analysis. Separate how you see the issues from how respondents see it. ممكن يكونوا هم غلطانين. Do not force the data to fit with what theory or model suggests. مش لازم، ده انت ممكن تطلع بتفسير جديد. so it doesn't يعني ما تطلعش نفس التفسير مش معناه ان انت غلط. maybe you find something in you. Don't over interpret the data and don't give more weight to some data or from some respondents unless justified. يعني دايما ال qualitative analysis and the qualitative data are يعني not very favorable for many researchers. الناس بتتعامل مع numerical data more يعني بأريح أكتر. And they prefer to use it in many researches, including social researches. However, qualitative data are very important. That's why it's a very يعني big part of the analysis, including the, as we said last time, including many non-probability interviews, techniques, case studies, and يعني that allow respondents to express يعني express their feelings and talk without borders. دايما quantitative بتعمل put borders. Okay. And finally, here is a summary of what we just said in this lecture. Quality analysis makes sense of the mix of data collection. Qualitative data collection begins with the design and plan, continues during field and after. Then the validity of the approaches have systematic and thorough process through getting to know the data, getting grips, making links, putting together, reviewing and developing and completing the analysis. And